now moving into chapter 8, called Reassurance. John, my first question, right at the beginning, you write, about a year later, I was out walking. And then in this first paragraph, to me, it sounds like a mystical experience. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I've always assumed that the word mystic was linked with mysterious. So nobody really knows. I don't know what a mystic is. And I think actually that's a good definition of it, is that nobody really knows quite what's meant by mystic. It's outside the normal limits of human understanding. It cannot, for example, be exactly described. Well, this first paragraph, there isn't a picture of it. I can't, I mean, some artists try to draw these things, but whether it convinces anybody else, I don't know. I used what words I could to describe it, but what does that mean to anybody else? That's mystic experience. If that's what it is, then you could call it that. What does it mean? I don't know. We just use those words, don't we?
Do you mind talking a little bit about the actual experience?
Well, previous to this, as we've already been describing in these videos, I'd had the experience of looking into a woman's eyes and seeing, as it were, beyond her, into what I describe as an infinite love, infinite something. The infinite, let's just call it infinite, because the moment you introduce another word into the infinite, you make it not infinite, don't you? You bring it down to something definite, define it. So let's stick with the word infinite. I looked into the infinite, and I was left. How on earth do I convey this to anybody else? Of course, one couldn't. I was lost for words. I couldn't even explain it to myself. It was beyond explanation. And I was washing around for a long time, several years, between this new reality that had burst in on my life and the world, the normal world that I was attempting to live in. And I was caught somewhere between two worlds, and it was very, very confusing, and led to much unhappiness, depression, and all, just about everything that it could lead to. But when this experience came to me, it was like a reassurance that I wasn't going crazy, and that what I had experienced had a reality, and this was like a confirmation of it. Confirmation of maybe a slightly lower order, but nevertheless a totally reassuring confirmation to me that I'd been shown something real, that gave me hope. Perhaps that's a good word to bring in, from this hopeless state of being completely lost between two worlds. Suddenly the other world took on a new reality.
I can understand how difficult it is to put into words these experiences. And I know all your books are about your experiences. And not an easy task to actually put them into words. In the second paragraph, John, of the first page of chapter 8, you write, my God as soulmate is most truly that, how little we glimpse or guess its full potential. There is no age as we know it, no past or future time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, this is much more familiar to me now, some 40 years later. In fact, I write very confidently now about, well, I could almost say living. Of course, I'm not there all the time, but large slices of my life are lived in a state of consciousness beyond space and time, where the definition soulmate takes on a much more real meaning than it may have done 40 years ago. See, I myself am on the verge of dying out, aren't I? What you see in front of you on the screen is will soon be in the grave, but the essence of what I am, of course, is untouched by that. The John Butler dies, but the I am, the pure consciousness, of course, doesn't. The pure consciousness doesn't age; it's ageless. In the same way as I keep connecting it with the sequence of stillness or silence, stillness, presence. Does silence age? Does silence age? What about stillness? The stillness that fills this room here, with me sitting in it, and the same stillness that fills your room, thousands of miles away. There's only one stillness, isn't there? One stillness that contains the stars. So that is ageless. And as we grow out of this temporal mortality, this existence we in this world we call life, which isn't real life, you realize, is immortal, undivided, and anyone that can share that, truly share it, not just with words, but in a shared experience. Well, you not only become, it may first, step one is to be a soulmate, and step two is to merge into the one undivided reality, which you could call the mystic marriage, maybe. And that is the true marriage, which is, of course, it's not in between you and me, it's something that's universal unity. Big things, aren't they, to talk about? It's really beyond the limits of conversation, isn't it? But perhaps one could grope for a sense of it. You know, in these sort of things, it always helps me enormously just to stop speaking and come back to silence, because they're the reality of this unchanging, agelessness becomes apparent, doesn't it?
Yeah, like it brings us into the experience of it, would you say? On the next page, on page 62, you write, so revelation is instant knowledge. One sees, one knows, one understands. For those of us, I mean, I can only speak for myself, that have not had the experience.
Yes.
What do we do with that?
Well, perhaps one could be encouraged. Perhaps one could glean a glimmer of hope that this world, with which it's so easily to be dissatisfied, is actually not the end of the story, and particularly those of you that are confronting death, either your own or anybody else's. There's much more to life than there's an expression, more to life than meets the eye, isn't there? Because this eye, you see, this eye which is made of flesh, is mortal, sees mortality. To see You see, you can't see silence, can you? You can't see silence with these things. And you can't actually, your senses can't really grasp it. It is beyond the senses. It is supernatural, isn't it? It's actually the real nature, but in terms of what we call nature at this level, it's supernatural. It's beyond the senses, and so you can only really grasp. You can't grasp it. It is ungraspable, but you can once again, I'll use the phrase, you can glean some experience of it, perhaps just touch the essence of it by coming to the same silence, the same unchangeable silence. And you see, that is instant knowledge, isn't it? You can't describe it, but everybody knows what silence is. Everybody knows what stillness is. And incidentally, we all have at least a perhaps rather childish, but nevertheless some comprehension of beauty and love, which you also cannot grasp. And what about freedom? It's something we all know something about. It's, who can say what it is? People find freedom in different ways, don't they? Some people require big skies and mountains. Some people find it just sitting at home. So instant knowledge, it comes to us in many ways. And in all things spiritual, we always get into trouble when we try to define the infinite, when we try to bring it down to within our human scale, our human understanding. There's what we call worldly knowledge, and there's higher knowledge. Higher knowledge can be described as faith, or you could use words like intuitive knowledge, instinctive knowledge. Which again, you can't really define. You just know. We say, well, I know in my guts about something. Something feels right. You can't sort of say what it is. People will do extraordinary things like that, just with a sense that something needs to be done. They know not why, but they know in a higher level.
You write, why are we here on Earth and not at home?
Why indeed? Why indeed? Because the more you get a glimpse of this higher reality, you consider this lower reality and think, what on earth am I doing here? Because it seems like prison. Why am I locked up in this? It is a prison. You're locked up in this temporal flesh with all its aches and pains and ups and downs and things. Was up there, it's like being in the stars. And then you look at other people also bogged down with their troubles and that. Why aren't we free? Why are we bound in this what so often is a miserable and once you get a glimpse of real freedom, it seems absolutely a miserable existence, this. It's not good enough. Once the heart has been open to something higher, it's just not good enough. It's too temporal, it's too small. I think for a man like me with a deep, deep yearning for freedom and the love that never ends, an idealist, if you like, but of which I'm, by the way, I'm not ashamed to be called an idealist. It's the best thing anybody can be, because it means you're aiming for something bigger. You're aiming for the perfection. And my dears, don't fool yourself. This world, you won't find it, but perfection does exist. Absolutely it exists. But you've got to break out from the limits of this mortality to find it. And that's work, that's real work. Why are we here on earth and not in heaven? Oh, well, that leads on to, again, this great question of why have we fallen from this higher consciousness, which it gradually dawns on us. This is really where we not only want to be, it's where we actually belong. That man is a spiritual being, but of course we don't. We may use the word, we may say it, but we don't know what we're talking about when we first start talking about it. Why have we fallen from that? Well, that's the story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. Temptation, which is a bit outside the scope of what we're talking about now, but it's this subject will come back for the rest of your life. Why are we here? And why are we locked up in this less than our potential, in this compromise with a lower form of life, which is the cause of our frustration? Some, of course, are content with it, but the real adventurous spirits are not. They want more. I'm an adventurer, always have been. Don't fence me in.
You go on in this chapter about one extreme led to another, and my heights were met by awful depths. And I think a lot of your listeners can really
Yes.
connect to that.
Well, absolutely. In a sense, the higher you go, the further you fall, because most certainly you, very, very few people claim to have had a great experience and to have stayed there, but I've never met one. And I certainly haven't. I think the vast majority of us, it's a long, long, long lifetime patient struggle to let go our bonds in this world and find our true home in spirit. It's easier said than done, but there is hope. There is hope. There's certainly hope.
I highlighted this sentence. It really stood out to me. And then you wrote a poem. You write, hour after hour, I spent calling on love in any way I could.
Yes.
And then you write this beautiful poem, which maybe you could read for us. But maybe you could talk a little bit about that, what that means to you, calling on love in any way I could.
You see, at this time, this love experience was so powerful that it swept aside all previous mantras and methods of meditation that I'd been taught, and love became the, if you can imagine, LOVE spelt in big letters across this screen. It was this completely dominated everything else in my life. It was the one thing that gave meaning to my existence. And although it was primarily focused on this woman, she'd already clearly showed me that she was not going along with it. And so I was thrown back to myself. But love was already spilling over into the universal world, and so meditation became an exercise on calling on love. What did I put? I called on love in any way I could. Well, that was just about it, I think. I was taken over by it completely. Marvelous, really. You know, I still am, really. It's been stayed with me the rest of my life. I was once called, I suppose it was probably about this time. I was still attending a school of meditation at this time, and I'd been with them nearly 20 years. And the leader of the school once called me a total lover. I think that's absolutely right. I have been all my life. I'm not that interested in any other way of spiritual work, really. For me, love's the way. But of course, it's not for everyone. Anyway, it's by no means a joyful process, you see, because there's no pain in this life like unrequited love, is there? It's what can hurt more than that, and the more one yearns for love and doesn't find it, whatever the reason, it can be agonizing. So I wrote this poem, which expressed how it was one night for me. So passed the night, the lonely night. I tore myself about and sleepless, tossed and turned aside and cried my aching out. And early in the morning, understanding came to mind of the constant disappointment for the spiritually blind. For in the dawning light I saw abundantly displayed the spiritual substance of which everything is made, including you, my darling, and including me, my dream, and once again reminding me we're closer than we seem. And so, with hope determining, into those depths I dive, with knowledge that alone of all, this loving will survive.
Beautiful.
Yes, there are higher levels, you see, of love, like higher levels of consciousness. In this world, we love, I love you, or I love chocolate or something, love animals. But you see, it rises, and as it rises, it becomes more universal. Universal ideas. There is no end to it. Think how the sun shines on all things. If the sun was love, which it probably is, who knows it isn't. You see, it loves all things unconditionally. Everything, even your worst enemies, even the man that steals your girl away. You love everyone, no matter what they do to you. That's real love. And it's a long time to even begin to get an understanding of it, let alone become it. God is love. What does that mean? It didn't mean much to me 40 years ago, but it was beginning to mean something. It means a lot more to me now. Because just look at me as I am on this screen. You see, what you see with your visible eyes dies out. The old man will die. And what's left? What's left? Maybe that is love. Why not?
You write more about love. Love is now. Love is the spiritual reality of the present moment, the absolute here and now, wherever, whenever, and with whoever we may be. And then it takes us into another poem.
Yes. Would you like me to read it?
Absolutely. It's a long one.
Just a long one. I think I couldn't express it better, really. So if you'll be patient with me, I'll read it. I wrote this out of pain, agony. I remember I had a little motor caravan at that time, one of the early ones. I was drifting around, homeless, not knowing what to do with myself. But we'd spoken, this girl and me, about love is now, the immediacy of love. And this just describes how it was for me one morning. You bid me recognize that love is now, confirming it and demonstrating how by looking, presenting, giving straight to me this master fact of love's immediacy. When love is now arises, love is wide. Dark desolation's curtains fall aside. Times past and future melt into being here. And simple realization blossoms clear. That waving grass and sunshine, traffic noise, and all things manifest are joys and indications of your love for me. Most sure it is, supreme and honestly, that love so welling in your misted eyes flows over endlessly in rich surprise, feeding my hunger with the wind's caress and nature beautiful in autumn dress. But somehow each of all these lovely things, though lovely in itself and what it brings, is passing empty too before my sight, only indicative, lit by reflected light, the whispering of deeper hidden ground, where only deep fulfillment may be found. As also with ourselves, all seen and heard is but an outer seeing, outer word. Enough is glimpsed when deepened eyes reveal to know the superficial from the real. This is no secret only for the wise. All lovers look into each other's eyes, and steadfast held, when loving trust is found, drink from that fountainhead of love unbound, and finding there the essence of love's light, penetrate further to the infinite. O God, my Saviour, and my love so dear, you've taken me so deep, so held me near, that through my daily living, shallow, far from those abundant depths, and where you are, I wander restless, fretful, until when this curtained absence may dissolve again, when oft with rising tears I miss you so, your love is now awakens, whispers low, I'll never leave you, no, nor rift allow, for always and forever, love is now. Well, yes, I wrote that 40 years ago, and it's still true today, isn't it? It's always now, here and now, that we come into the immediacy of of the immortal moment, which is love, always now.
In the last paragraph of this chapter, it's where you're reflecting back. Your last line is, "I spent more and more time in prayer," or meditation, I assume. I've heard you say it's this, for you it is the same thing, and that much less concerned with worldly ends.
Yes, that's right. Yes, with worldly ends, because see, the world looks to a finite end. It has a temporary sort of schedule of satisfaction, doesn't it? Whereas all real prayer is surrender into the infinite. It is, when you turn to God, which is of course the infinite. Of course, a lot of people do pray, God give me something for my birthday. Well, that's probably how we start with prayer. But as prayer develops, it becomes much more of a total surrender into thy will, not mine. God knows best. Thy will be done, not mine. And so it is with love. The wonder of love is that the love expands with you as you move towards the infinite. You don't lose love. Love isn't left behind. Love comes with you. Love just gets bigger. This is ordinary human experience, isn't it? That a child's love is pretty much confined to its toys and things like that, mother and father. As we grow up, love, it includes more people, doesn't it? More dogs, countries, more people. It gets ever bigger. And so love grows from very much the small and finite to the universal. So I spent ever more time in prayer, and although I didn't realize it at the time, sort of instinctively, I was somehow being carried, I think, rather than my doing it myself. I wasn't really the prime mover in this. I felt I was being taken and carried into an ever greater dimension, an ever greater reality of what was becoming ever more evident to me was love, 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 love. It started with this woman, and for many years it continued largely centered upon her. Certainly at the time I wrote this poem, it was like that. But see now, I can always say, well, what do I not love? Who and what do I not love? I'm not sure I can say anything. I don't think there's anything in heaven or earth now that isn't. I don't say it's not my love, because my is this thing that's going to die. It's just contained in ever greater love, which is, this is the great wonder of approaching the end of your life. You realize that's what I, almost unbelievably, I am. And this is really what I'm not. This is what's left behind. There's still struggles, of course. There's still, functions in the world, but it's the door opens ever wider, and now time and space seem really quite small and limited to me. I look on time and space, and how can we ever get so small? The real world is timeless and spaceless. It really is so. I'm like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. This is my cocoon, you see, wrapped up. I'm even wrapped up in a shawl tonight because it's cold outside. But you can see the sort of light in my eyes, isn't it? I'm laughing as I talk to you. There's a sort of bubbling excitement of me when I talk about this emergence into a new life. You see, it's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. and it's love, my dears. And you see, this love is, as I come out of my own agenda, as it were, for this love, it just spills over to everything. It's no longer my love, but I suppose what happens is that John Butler ceases to be an impediment. This is what mortality really is. See, I've made when we're young, we can't really take this on board because we think we're an asset to the world and to other people. But we gradually come to see that the only problem in this world is me. It's this limited thing we call the ego, which really puts a sort of a block between this infinite grace, which is the outpouring of universal love, and when we sort of channel it into my own what suits me. So we get disappointed. Maybe this disappointment is the best thing that can happen, because we gradually are pulled to a higher reality. It's through our tears that we grow. My God, I've shed my share of tears, I assure you, in this world. But looking back, I can see them as an uncomfortable blessing. All my failures and mistakes are really blessings in disguise. So take heart. Come and join the great company of failures and misfits. And let's go and find the real world. No more messing about. Come on the great adventure. The adventure that has no end. The love that never says no. Ah, wouldn't that be wonderful? Isn't that wonderful?